So now to the aftershocks still rippling concerning former President Joe Biden, his decline and the alleged cover-up, as they call it. Now comes another claim. First Lady Jill Biden abruptly cut off the Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro after Shapiro raised concerns about the president's dismal debate performance in that month of June. Mary Katharine Ham, Fox News contributor, Kevin Walling, former Biden surrogate. Hello to both of you. If we were on Jeopardy, the category would be obvious. Or maybe we told you so, okay? So there's a new book out, yet again. Alex Thompson from Axios, Jake Tapper, CNN. It's called Original Sin. And this has been rippling around the ether, okay? This is Laura Trump with Jake Tapper in October of 2020. This went on for a while. We pulled this clip.
What we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline. Okay. That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
you have
to watch somebody on stage search for
so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were mocking his stutter. Yeah, I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline.
Yeah, I mean, it went on for a while now. I think at one point you said, I'm no doctor, I'm an observer, whatever the words was. I think I was paraphrasing here. MK, are we stating the obvious? Did you find something new this time around?
I mean, breaking. It was not a stutter. We are reaching sort of ludicrous levels of the media reporting on the media noticing something that 80% of Americans noticed in 21 or 22, you know? Now, that was 2020 when that clip ran, but it was more than a stutter then as well. I mean, the next thing they're going to tell me is that, Trump wasn't a Russian asset, or that Hunter Biden, in fact, wasn't an international energy expert and renowned artist, and that's why he was getting paid all that money. Look, the media often comes to conclusions that the American people came to using their eyes and ears far earlier, and then congratulates themselves for doing it. I think this is a major scandal. I don't want to know when George Clooney decided, because Biden didn't recognize him, that this was the end of the road and he was shaken to his core. I want to know who was president when Biden wasn't, because there were many times when I don't think he was capable of doing the job, when he was only capable of doing the job for a few short hours a day. We have this information. I appreciate that the media is finally interested in this, largely because the American people won't forget that this happened and that they were lied to about it. But the smearing of people who said something different is a real problem, and people should apologize.
Okay, Kevin, I want to bring you in. I think you've been pretty frank about this from the beginning, and you were close to the Biden White House, at least in the beginning, I guess we could argue. An excerpt from the book says, if there's no diagnosis, there's nothing to disclose. That's according to a White House medical unit consultant. On his face, that's true. What do you think about this topic now, Kevin, at this point?
Well, certainly, Bill, to your point, the White House should have taken a different tact in terms of its response. It closed ranks, right? It put the president behind closed doors, away from the press, rather than address the concerns, serious concerns of the American people. To MK's point, 2/3 of the American people thought he was too old for the job for re-election in 2024. And rather than addressing those concerns, they kind of walled him off from the media, from the American people. And then we saw the effect of that in that debate in June, one of the worst nights of my life, because I was there on Fox having to spin for that night. And the American people saw what had happened. And of course, the Biden of 2020 was a lot different than the Biden of 2024. And I wish he had been that transitional candidate that he talked about, and that transitional leader to give way to the next generation of Democrats that were waiting in the ranks.
Yeah, I like that phrase there, Kevin, having to spin. I mean, that could be the title of your next book now. So now let's move the conversation forward, because there are some who are now stepping out a little bit, who we might see in New Hampshire, we might see in Iowa. J.B. Pritzker, Pete Buttigieg, roll this.
I think the one thing that I would say is that certainly either he needed to be the Democratic nominee, as he promised he would be, or he needed to drop out before the Democratic primaries.
Would the party have been better off if he had just not run for re-election?
Maybe. And, right now, with the benefit of hindsight, I think most people would agree that that's the case.
Okay, there you go. Mayor Pete's got a beard. Andy's in Iowa. MK, I don't know. I mean, has the story run its course?
I mean, look, In the political world, we're all happy to talk about 2028 already, and he's grown his beard to do so. Look, I think the problem for both, for anybody who's in the running for 2028 for Democrats is, one, you do have to distance yourself from Biden and from the cover-up of his health, and they should be held to account for the things they said at the time and the access they had to them and what they knew. And then you also have to make an argument that you're good at your job that you've done, right? J.B. Pritzker is overseeing Illinois, which has deep fiscal problems, deep educational problems, deep quality of life problems. Pete Buttigieg, when he got his job at Department of Transportation, I don't deny that he's a very good talker. I think he's engaging. I think he seems like he's thought about policy. But then he had a chance to enact policy at Department of Transportation, and he often just wasn't at the switch. And then now he's Monday morning quarterbacking anyone who comes after him. And so I think you have to prove, if you're Newsom or if you're him or if you're Pritzker, that you did a job well while you were doing the job, I think, for Democratic voters.
Kevin, the dismount comes when?
Well, listen, I think more importantly is how these folks are navigating Trump 2.0, especially these governors, right? You have a different tact with J.B. Pritzker, fire and brimstone, taking the fight to Donald Trump. And you have Gretchen Whitmer with that binder moment in the Oval Office, trying to navigate working with the Trump administration, right? Bringing jobs and investments back to Michigan. So I think, obviously to MK's point, navigating, and responding to, the Biden, relationship is one thing. I think more importantly is what you're doing for your state, whether you're a governor or in Congress, and how you're navigating Trump 2.0 is really what's going to resonate with Democratic-based supporters.
Okay, amen to that. Kevin, MK, thanks. Love you guys together. Come on back,
Bill.
okay? Appreciate your time today.
Have a good one.
Okay, you too.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.